Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it also gets uploaded as a YouTube video on my YouTube channel of Zenitsu, while also being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Please feel free to leave a rating, review, follow, subscribe, or whatever, depending on the platform that you're choosing to listen on. It really does help out the channel and, well, the podcast. Today, I'm doing something a little bit different, and I'm actually with my teammates who I went to nationals with. So it is going to be Nikki is the Forerunner, and he's currently here. Headless and Guardian will be joining later if they can. But yeah, just a little post-nationals recap, just because that was the big thing that happened, so we might as well talk about our experience participating in the event. So, I know there is some just pre-nationals data that we had to go over. It's not anything too big, it's just tech. We don't know the size of the event, but here's the top 16 breakdown, which is at first place was Anubis. Second place was Red Hybrids. Third place was Beelstar. Fourth was Red Hybrids. Fifth was Wargray. Sixth was Red Hybrids. Seventh was Leomon. Eighth was Anubis. Ninth was Shine. 10th was Diva. 11th was Edamon. So cool that Edamon snuck in because it got an update in EX5. 12th was Red Hybrids. 13th was Red Hybrids. 14th was Anubis. 15 and 16 were both Red Hybrids. We're not going to go over any of the decks in specific, at least not as of right now, just because there is a lot to go over, because we also have the North American top 16, which I don't necessarily think tax influenced our top 16 too much. We kind of already knew what the good decks were, and it was just who was good enough to get there. So just quickly going over our top 16, because we do have the top 64 breakdown as well. But we'll get into that later. But first, what most people care about is top 16, which is first place Anubis, second place Security Control, third place Mirage, fourth place Anubis, fifth place Red Hybrids, sixth place Anubis, seventh place Fenrir Lugamon, eighth place Purple Metal Garurumon, ninth place Anubis, 10th place Belphamon, 11th place Anubis, 12th place another Purple Metal Garurumon, 13th place Security Control, 14th place Anubis, 15th place Beelzemon, and 16th place Yellow Vaccine. So North America definitely was extremely purple heavy, and I would say tech is way more red heavy, just because red kind of does well into purple. So that's one reason why. Plus, I don't know how much, I don't know Oceania's situation in terms of getting cards right before an event, because we had a week. They might have had less, so that could have influenced things a little bit.
As far as I know, usually Europe and Italy area. Wait, TAC was Australia, right?
Yeah, Oceania is Australia.
No. They're far behind. They're good on it, but I know Europe is usually a lot earlier than ours for some reason.
Probably just because how distribution works and when stores would get the product. So maybe players just made deals with stores and be like, hey, I'm playing in this big event, give me it a little bit early so I could build. I'll buy some extra just because I know I can't order online. So maybe that helped to boost the sales of the set, which we already know cards are getting limited, which ultimately you would think would hurt the sales. But with how stupid the promos are, is it really going to hurt the sales? I don't know. It's weird.
EX5 definitely feels like it feels like Resurgence Booster 2.0.
I don't think it's that bad. Resurgence Booster is a colossal failure on the financial front. I don't think EX5 is nearly that bad.
we say that now. Just like, let me put it this way. Resurgence Booster was good on release for a little bit, just because everyone wanted to build Gamamon and like the new Ghost decks, and that's where we're going with EX5 of like Devas and like Were Guru, Bancho Leo, and like by proxy the Edamon. So we're in the hype period because it just released the week before Nats, which we'll get to later about the worst formats ever. But I think as time goes on, EX5 is gonna die down quickly, just because Deva doesn't seem like it's holding its weight, but I don't think it's gonna have the gas to keep putting the weight forward. And then we know Melga gets hit, and then people are gonna switch to it. But I don't think like none of the Melga pieces were super high rarity, which can drive the price of the sales. It's just gonna be Galaxy and Devas, which Galaxy is like the main selling point of EX5 at this point.
Yeah, just because we know it's getting support in BT16 that actually is relevant enough to make the deck actually good, on top of Ukamon being an absolutely busted card to use in the time being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Galaxy definitely does seem like it's going to be the deck with the most legs. Next to what's his face? I'm blanking on his name already just because of how. Oh, Leviamon. Leviamon also seems like it's going to hold value in terms of like good
Oh yeah.
SRs. It's all of the value is literally
Mm-hmm.
just in Leviamon and X Antibody, Protoform.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next step below that is literally the Galaxy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of SRs. So I think the set is fine. The promos are really gonna be what's gonna make the set hold its value. Um, but I think like part of some of the success of like Edamon in Oceania is the inexperience on the new updates for the deck in terms of how do I play against this? Because just like Leomon, I honestly don't think a whole lot of people A are on it, and B actually know how to play against it, because
Mm-hmm.
nobody's really on it to play against. Everyone
Uh,
was looking at like Anubis, Beelstar, Red Hybrid, like, your tried and true classics on what we knew would be good.
that was literally my round three. I had because right after the buy fiasco of getting people in with Bison, I get paired with literally a deck I have not read. I have to like read the cards as they come out because I'm reading them and I'm like, what does this do? I played against a Bancho Leomon player and I felt so bad for him because I was his worst matchup.
I mean, that's literally what happened to me when I entered the tournament after my 2 round bye. I faced my worst matchup, and um, literally seeing that is like the most soul crushing thing ever, just
Mm-hmm.
because like sometimes matchups are honestly that negative where you just on your deck cannot physically win unless the opponent just literally doesn't play the game.
Yeah, because I think the Banshee. I told my team this. You by proxy. The Banshee Leomon player had like 20 cards in his hand when I was starting to when I had to shuffle back cards. It was a lot of cards in hand because Banshee Leo naturally adds cards to hand, and then on top of it, me bouncing a lot of his trying to stick a body on the board plays. It really makes Fortitude a bad mechanic when blue exists.
Yeah. So I don't remember my exact number. I know I was in like the 400s, which that's not exactly where, like, in terms of placement. The event had like 975 players. I'm just gonna be generous and round up to 1,000 just because math is easy. And I'll say I was
Mm-hmm.
like in the 400s, early 400s. So I was positioned 100 worse last year, but I also felt like last year I made a better no, this year I definitely made a better meta call. Last year, for whatever reason, there was just less variance in terms of like my opponents. So
Yeah.
I already have a whole video breaking it down, but I'll just do it real quick again. So I got the 2 round bye. Round three, I lost to Devas. Round four, I beat an Anubis. Round five, I lost to Blue Flare. Round six, I beat Royal Knights. Round seven, I played against Beelstar and won. Then rounds eight and nine, I played against two more Beelstars and lost. Um, which I generally shouldn't, but they were able to stall just barely long enough to be able to wombo combo to kill me. And then round 10, I lost to Lugamon. I was on Red Hybrids. I think Red Hybrids was one of the safest choices. And according to the top 64 data, it definitely shows that Red Hybrids was one of the safest picks. It's just sometimes in tournaments, you just get high rolled out. So if anyone's actually interested on hearing more of me speak about that, I do have a YouTube video for that on my YouTube channel. Nikki, so you kind of did a little bit better than me. You have the floor to basically say what you played and what you played against and how your matchups went, because you actually made it into top 64 day 2, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. So for starters, I am Nikki. I am Wind Up Seraph on Discord. I went I think my placing by the end of at the end of day 1, I thought I was 42nd place, but after day 2 and all the fixing of stuff, I had been bumped up, I think, to 39th place, I want to say. The spreadsheet was really weird when I went to go back and check my placings. But top 6, I made day 2. The downside was I could not make day 2. So unfortunately I had to I think I was the only person who had to bow out of day 2. Again, I didn't think I'd get this far, so that's my first thing. I played Mirage Galgamon. There's like, I think, how many more Mirages were there in Top Cut? Like 2 more or 3 more?
In terms of Mirages, there was a total of 8 Mirages, and you were one of the 8.
Yeah. So yeah, it's this meta is really rough, and going into this meta, I was on like 4 different decks, like the months leading up to this event, mainly because we knew our format, and I'm not gonna lie, there's Bandai has this weird issue where, like, just before a regional, they're like, we have a set released, and you either have 1 week, 2 week, or 20 days to get your stuff and figure out the meta, because that's how we did it. Back in BT13 format, you had BT13 legal for all of, like, 2 weeks, I want to say? Because you had pre-release the week before. You had 3 weeks. You had the week of. The week before was, like, a week free, and then the week before that was pre-release. So that was, like, you had time, but, like, as this meta and, like, this format shows, like, when you need, like, secret rares and certain stuff, you need to buy things ASAP. And so when we went to figure out what I was going to play, originally I was going to play, like, Metal Garurumon, Melga. I was on a blue base because I got really inspired by our last regional in November or December. The guy who played blue Melga all the way up. The one who lost to Red Hybrid. I think he won. No, he topped, right? Or did he?
He made top 16. I don't think he
He was
won.
second. That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone was on Red Hybrid winning. But that list gave me inspiration for how I wanted to play Melga in this format, which I think is correct. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we pick apart this meta. I kept playtesting it, and it was really rough because, don't get me wrong, the Melga engine is really strong, but the problem is, the harder your matchup is, the more gas you have to commit to clear the board. Like, against the Anubis, Melga doesn't do anything until you hit your, like, level 5, level 6 range. And granted, you can explode from your rookie to that stage, but you're wasting a lot of resources on the climb. And it came down to, against the dreaded Merva, Anubis, and 2 blockers, one is a Saber, always a Saber. Like, you're wasting... You have to go swing, trigger the... You have to go into Ace, getting rid of, like, a majority of your hand. Swing, toss something to get rid of the 4s. Trigger your X antibody to go into X. Unsuspend yourself to hopefully clear the level 6s. And then try to kill for game. And don't get me wrong, that's really strong when you think about it, like, the amount of board breaking you can do. But the fact that you have to commit to it quickly. And the fact that when you go, you're just drawing and discarding a lot of your hand and committing resources that you can't say, oh, I just need to toss a rookie because I can win this turn, when, like, maybe you die, maybe you don't get lucky and something happens, and then you're down those resources you throw away. And I could not commit to that. Plus, against Black War, you literally don't do anything.
Well,
it was just a lot of the matchups were good enough if you were going to grind them. And I was like, this is not a format where you have time to grind it out. You really don't.
No, that's what Beelstar was trying to do, and the fact that for North America, what, no Beelstars made it into top 16 or top 32 or no,
I
top
think
64.
I
Um
think a reason for that too is that you're sacking security. You're hoping your security has enough security bombs to win you the match, which shouldn't be your deck building philosophy unless you're Secon.
well, so after playing against it, like the deck has some good cycling because of the Garurumon engine, but it is trying to play like that long game where I'm just trying to build up this one cheeky stack and then just when in doubt combo out and use their ability to unsuspend uh, a Garurumon because and bounce a body to just repeatedly hit the opponent's security, and that was like basically the only way Beelstar actually was winning. Other than that, it was just trying to stall to get to that point.
Yeah.
But I was talking with Lychee, and he's just like, no, no, no. In this format specifically, purple is better because it has an easier time OTKing than blue does, even though there was more blue in top 64. Obviously, in top 16 is where both of the purple Melgas were versus the blues being in top 64 and not top 16. So there was a discrepancy in terms of the power, and he told me like, yeah, so the missing card that a lot of people are like sleeping on is Pummel Whack, just because you discard it to draw a card, and that maintains your hand as best as you possibly can to be able to continue going, especially really quickly because you could, you know, still hit a lot of checks just because of how the new purple stuff wants to try to be blue. Um, but
Yeah.
it's a solid deck. I was thinking about that also because like I've been posting on social media like one of my decks that I'm thinking about was Melga, but again I didn't know how much EX5 I would be able to get to commit to that. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I'll drop that. And my other decks I was thinking was like Fenrir and Bloomlord. I'm glad I didn't take Bloomlord. Bloomlord's got a
Oh
lot
no.
of like good in-engine stuff, but for where the meta is, there's just a lot of natural counters to it just because they're already countering for other stuff that just so happens to eat it alive, which is why
Yeah.
we didn't see any in top 64 at all, which
Yeah.
is
It's
unfortunate.
just the format became way too toxic. For certain decks that are good, they just got killed by association.
I think that's like part of Anubis's problem, is like he just existing kills a lot of decks either just because he counters them, which I don't think Anubis has a bad matchup in almost anything in the entire meta, just because of like how fast that can move. And I also think like because of his playstyle, it's like why would I play Fenrir when I could play Anubis? Fenrir requires way more setup, is less consistent, and is not as efficient as Anubis. Even though the damage output could be very similar, Anubis just covers more ground and does it faster. Um,
Yeah, that was my thing. So like going back to like because like the other thing was like EX5 right now is a volatile set because we know things are getting hit, so nobody wants to commit to too much of it, and that's why like the other decks my teams were thinking about was like, oh yeah, we can take a Deva because when we played it against you, it was performing really well, and then I'm glad I feel like maybe we should have gotten it for my teammate because I think he would have had a better time on it than Black War. But it's just like this meta is so it's a fake OTK meta that it hurts because like Mirage is an OTK deck. Don't get me wrong, but the problem with the OTK deck is that I take longer to set up than Anubis can because I played 3 Anubis games in my Swiss rounds and I lost to one of them, and that was because he just opened the nuts every time. Like and keep in mind, I won a match where I won my 2 out of 3 Anubis round where he went into ruin mode like twice in the same duel, like back to back in ruins, and I was able to win that. Like I won that, but I couldn't win turn 2 Anubis exploding and hitting me for 4 checks. Like that's when I was like, oh god, I'm out.
yeah,
Because Mirage has always had this thing like it's just really good into certain matchups because you balance is a very strong mechanic for blue that is the blue identity that kind of just gets around a lot of stuff.
Not to mention,
Um,
Mirage also taxes for consistency. So it's
oh,
just like, oh,
trust.
you want to draw cards or add cards to your hand? Sure, go ahead. I'll just tax you for that.
Game 3 of that double ruin mode chicanery I was dealing with, I made 3 mirages on board, and it was a game, trust me. I don't understand how any of it went out. Like, looking back on it, I'm just like, you could have just killed him at that point, like. But no, like, when you're in that moment, like, there's so much, like, I remember my new game 3 of that, like, double ruin mode, my newest player made the board, the dreaded, no, the famous board, Merva 2, Merva, Anubis, 2 bodies, I'm going to win, and I picked apart that board so carefully because I was scared, because I went Mirage, bounced the Saber, I went into a Zudomon to bounce something to get sources out from the Merva to bounce that, but also to get rid of the other level 3, and then I went into like a Mirage to bounce something else, and then Burst Mode on top of, and then I went into another Burst Mode. It was just like when Mirage gets going, it's very disgusting how much memory you can tax your opponent and the amount of memory you gain from just exploiting the hand size. It is very, very cathartic when you can get that pick apart board through like Mirage, Zudo, Burst Mode, and like pick it apart. It was very cathartic, but Anubis is just way too fast, and I'm glad it's getting hit because the amount of speed in that deck. Because even your level 5 should cost you, like, every other deck, your level 5 costs you 3, but Anubis gets to play with the pseudo training where if they built the Ogre Goblin stack, it's a 1 cost level 3 on any level 5 they've played. And you go into Anubis, passing turn, getting the memory, keeping turn with Merva, and it is very, very strong in this meta.
Yeah, even like at worst, it still just leaves the opponent with like 1 or 2 memory, and you're staring at 4 bodies on board, and it's just like, wow, that was that was a turn. Do I reasonably have a response? Like as a red hybrid player, it usually takes me a couple of turns to be able to set up. After like my first turn is usually just set up my aggro, then my turn 2 is set up my tamer. To turn 3 maintain my aggro, and if they're down my throats by turn 2, there's not a lot that I can do, especially on the higher levels, because like Red Hybrid specifically has a problem touching high level Digimon if it isn't off of BT 12 Emperor, which that is the fault of the deck. I mean, granted, it's an aggro deck. It's not trying to hardcore interact, but you still need to. Otherwise, you just almost auto lose the certain matchups, which is why it has a huge problem against decks that could wall it out. Um, but what were so we know you faced against 3 Anubis. What were some of your
let me go
other
through my
matchups?
matchups.
Yeah.
So let me go through my matchups. Round 1, I had a Mastimon player. Guardian plays Masty religiously, so I know that matchup inside and out. And my opponent was good. Trust me, he kept leaving like. There's certain boards playing decks where like I know where this is going, and then like because he went in the Mirai Angemon play out a Lady Devi. Everyone knows you're going straight into Master. You're going straight into like the DNA. Your Lucymon's gonna come from your trash back into security, come out, pop the board, pop your tamer. You're out of the game. You're gonna have to rebuild. And then he would put out the Lady Devi, and then he would go Kudamon, and I'm just like, all right, I have like 1 turn to kill you now. And basically, what that matchup came down to was when I went into burst mode because Mirage, you always give your opponent an advantage because you have to give them cards to keep exploiting them. I kept shuffling back his key pieces back into the deck with burst mode because I would give him, he would look for the Masty, and then it would go right back into security, or it would go right back into the deck. And like I don't know that because as the Mirage player, the way it's ruled is that you get to pick the cards at random. So like I have him play out his hand, and you just kind of have to like hover your hand over his card and experience and see if the card gives you the bad juju. Does it look at you funny? Does it insult you? Does it just look wrong to you? And you're just playing, again, black magic. Maybe this card is like something. And for me, I kept shuffling back his Masties. I kept shuffling like level 4s. I got degraded enough times to go back into security, but it's just the fact that I can get a burst mode to stick. And then I think at one point he Heaven's Judgmented me. But I have jamming on my eggs, so the next check didn't matter. And it was like, Like it's a hard matchup, but I just kept putting his cards back, and that's what mattered. Game 2, I had a Melga matchup. Purple Melga, I should specify. Purple Melga. I don't like Purple Melga just because of the pieces it lost. It's very one-sided. My opponent was also not on the blue Melga. It was on the blue purple Melga X. So
Yeah,
a
that
lot of the
card's just
times,
not good.
like all it does is that it does like Axe antibody to try to keep the turn with the proto form because you need to. So that way you can go, oh, I'll swing, shuffle back the same level as you to destroy you, and it's like you can keep yourself from decking out, yeah, but you don't have innate protections. And so a lot of the times he would end on this level 6 that burst mode just gets rid of it immediately. The other thing that I think Mirage has as a benefit is the fact that Zudo Ace is a very, very pushed card, and that it is an 8k body that, like, it's the strongest ace at the current moment. Like, no other ace hits 8k on a level 5. Like, yes, the level 6s hit, like, 11, and, like, yes, but, like, every other level 5 is, like, a 7 or 6k body. Like, this is the first 8k.
No, they're all AKs. It's just Zudo is the only one that can actually interact with other level 5s and up. The others can't. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, Lily can, but like suspending it doesn't really get rid of it. Zudo actually can get rid of.
Yeah, especially because, like, you get to pick your sources, and then if you don't have any, you get bounced. The I felt bad for the Melga player, but, like, he would attack, because you have to, it's a part of the game plan, attack his 5, and I would... Sometimes he only has one Garuru or Gabu X on the stack, and I just remove it. I go Zudo, remove it. I don't die at the time, because, like, my level 4 he doesn't have the inheritable to die until he becomes the 6. My 4 always lives. Like, it's suspended, yeah, I'll give you the overflow to get more memory for you. But I remove your protections, and we're going into the check, and Mirage has an 8k ace, which beats over the level 5. It hits, like, most of your burst modes and your actual Mirages, and I'm playing 5 of them. And so he would always die on the check. Hey, so our second special guest has appeared. We'll get to him in a minute. Just so I can finish this thought. But a lot of times he would swing into security, and I would just pick apart his protections, and then he would either get removed by my 1 of 3 removal spells, or maybe he hits just out of his DP threshold, because purple doesn't have DP in its stack. Nor does it have the old X antibodies. Like, you can remove 2 of the same levels to protect you from battle. And with those protections gone, a lot of times he kept dying in security when he would swing. And you really can't, like, play around it, because as the Melga player, the moment you have to start swinging early, because you need your draws, your advantage, and the draw discard. But that's also the downfall. Like, your hand, you can get under my hand limit exploitation of, like, 8 cards. But when I can keep bouncing your cards and put you in a stalemate, nothing really gets there. The most impactful thing was what the blue-purple Melga did was it blew up my Mirage. It spit out a Goma, and then the Goma took his source, and it's like Goma could swing and, like, pass 4 memory, but I'm like, okay, cool, I'm just going to set up a turn and then swing after. Like, I'll do a training and then swing. Like, I don't care if I'm going to die. Like, I stripped the last protection I needed to get rid of you. So that was my round 2. Round 3 was Leomon. It's a good deck if you're not playing blue. I gave him a bunch of cards in his hand. I kept bouncing his cards back to his hand, and he was hoping to avoid me all tournament, and I do the standard Zudo, bounce cards back to your hand, Mirage, bounce cards to your hand. I think at one point he had like 20 cards in his hand. It's the high. No, it was 16. It was 16 cards in his hand. It was the highest I've ever gotten for memory thresholds. Because I went into a Mirage and I gained 4 memory. And I felt like, wait a minute, this is not...
Blue just can get around on delete effects, and Fortitude is basically on delete, replay the Digimon. So
Yeah.
that probably helped.
Yeah, my round 4 was my first Anubis, but it was... Maybe it was discount. I don't know. Like, my opponent did Biting Crush turn 2 because he had to, I guess, every high level card in his hand. We had a judge call for delay for, like, if I die with a Goma on the Biting Crush, can you immediately delay to get out your Levy? and the ruling is no. Delay is a keyword, so you have to wait until the turn after. Um, it was game 2. He blew me out. Game 3, I just picked apart his board, and I made a mistake where I went Mirage on top of my Zudomon, and I immediately burst moded that stack, and I'm like, wait, I can't. He reminded me, oh, you can't attack with that stack, and I'm like, oh, you're right. But I forgot to draw for the evolution, so I draw, and it's a burst mode, and I just do it on the stack that can attack, and that was game over. The round after that was my first loss. That was Black War. Black War is my worst matchup because
Yeah, bounce protection, and he could just actually wall you out.
Black War Kill Your Tamer, Gaiomon, Digivolve for 2. I cannot believe I got Gaiomon in this year. But yeah, he Gaiomon me and checked for security, and I'm like, you have protections. It's a wrap. I felt defeated on that one, but there's nothing you can do on that one. I think I went into another Anubis after. That's the time I picked apart a board with 3 Mirages. Like, Zudo, bounce something, gain 2 off my first Mirage after, gain memory, stick another Zudo, get another Mirage, and it was just a loop of stuff that, like, oh, it was weird. That double ruin mode on a single round is weird too. Like, it was all bad. After that, I think I faced. I'm trying to remember now. I faced another Anubis somewhere, and I think that's the game I dropped, and I felt really. He just opened. Yeah, it was my round. That was the round 5, I think. I just, or whatever round it was, I dropped that against the Anubis. He opened the nuts 2 out of 3 games. I won game 2 because I put up a hell of a fight. I didn't get 2-0'd at all. I got 2-1'd. But that won't happen. And then my last 3 rounds are the weird ones because the second to last round I faced a Shine player, and unfortunately for Shine, when you brick with Shine, you brick like a house, and Mirage just goes, that's a very nice brick on the board. I'm gonna bounce it back to your hand, and Mirage can't kill a Zudomon without committing 4 or more memory, and so when you're at memory, as the Shine player, all you can really do is like Agumon. If you can like push out Greymon for 2, and then like if you're at 3, you can maybe get the Marcus to get you into Rise, but you can't do anything after that. Like, you're pretty much passing on that, or like maybe you could Shine. But he had an instance where I had a Zudo and a Mirage, or like it just came to the point like it's too much memory for him, and he doesn't have enough stuff banked. Where I just kind of force my way into turn 1 Zudo, go into Mirage, and then you're just taxed the rest of the game, and you can't do anything. Especially since some of your rookies and champs get you to draw cards on Geo and Agu. So you just pay the Mirage tax, and then you're kind of like, well, where do I go from here? My round after that was my saddest round ever. I won, but it didn't bring me joy. I faced my favorite deck, the deck that got me into spending money in Digimon, the deck that is... He is me, Dark Knightmon. A Dark Knightmon player had gotten into X2, and oh my god, I felt bad killing him.
You know, I don't feel bad at all for that.
So that's our friend that's my teammate Guardian, but from what he told me, all of his options kept sticking to his hand, and it came to the point that like he would drop something to get consistency. He checked me for 2 at one point, but I just Zudo, remove your sources, bounce you, and then the game is over. I felt so heartbroken knocking him out of the round, but you're blue, you kind of have an advantage against most black decks that don't have an innate I can get the sticker on the board mechanic.
Yeah.
The round after that was Hunters, and this is the one that I'm the most proud of. In my last regional run, my round 3 had given me my first loss, and it was Hunter versus Mirage. He had blown me out 2 games in a row, and this time we went, and I got my 2-0 victory back, and it was really just Zudo is the best overperformer for Mirage, and having the 5th Mirage is what gave me my advantage.
Yeah.
This meta is very toxic. This meta is very much explode turn 2 or die. Mirage has the benefit of you can, against most other decks that are trying to compete with Anubis, you get to kind of deteriorate their strategy. Like, Zudo can very much hurt a lot of other decks that aren't Anubis in the early game of like, I need
Hybrid
resources.
especially.
Yeah, I need to build my stack, I need to build resources. I need to drop a rookie to search, and like Zudo can punish that really quickly. Against Anubis, Mirage is pretty much just playing the Yu-Gi-Oh game of I need to break apart your board the most memory efficient way, the way where I don't swing and die. If there was any changes I would make to into this meta, is I would have brought the BT4 Mirage Galgamon, the one that is unblockable, because I think that would have helped me the most against Mervamon.
Well,
Because I
also
don't have to.
yeah, he also when Digivolves gains you memory back just like the old one. So he could be a little bit more memory efficient than the BT12 one.
Yeah, like the main. I think that there is that, but it's just the fact that you're unblockable. Unblockable seems really bad when your BT13 mock says you can't be redirected, but I was not playing that mock because that mock I could have played
Yeah,
more, but
so he does.
BT11 mock giving you the blocker and the DP helps so much when they both unsuspend the moment you go into the Mirage, but it's just the fact that that DP and blocker made a lot of my matchups a zero-sum game because a lot of them forget that I have DP on my blocker or that I am the blocker. And I think I had one instance where someone went to a swing and I blocked, and I'm like, I have like, how many cards do you have in hand? You have like a lot of cards. You have like 12 cards in your hand. 8. I have like. So I'm a 12k Mirage. I have my level 4 Thomas player, so that gives me 13. Plus 4, I'm like 17k blocker. And I'll unsuspend myself if you have a card in your hand, or if you ever add a card back to your hand. So like, you go to swing, you trigger all your effects. So if I'm suspended because I got really aggressive, I'll unsuspend myself and block you, and then it's really like you really don't have space to cut, and you have to play the EX4 mock just because it's the best aggro tool. But
I'll be
honestly, I don't. In this meta, I would have taken him out for another redirectable, only because the Bukamon egg carries you a lot more than the. Like, I can attack when you have 8 cards in your hand. The unsuspend with that Buka was like. I would forget to trigger it sometimes, but I think me being dumb and forgetting to trigger it saved me a lot of the times because I would swing on blockers that are bigger than me. And, like, with EX4 conditioning of the mock, you're trained not to swing first and then even into Mirage because you'll forget you're inheritable. You can't unsuspend yourself on swing, so like it's a lot better.
Yeah.
But either way, like I got day 2, I couldn't make it, but in this meta, I would probably take Mirage again, but just make more changes. And Zan gave me the best tech in my games ever, Zan. I don't understand how you did it. You got Full Metal Blaze to stick to my hand every game. And every game that card overperformed, just like Zodomon.
I mean,
I can confirm this. Full Metal is actually a good tech in comparison to the Full Moon Buster.
Yeah.
The fact that you're able to bounce a 4, and if they have 8 or more, bounce a freaking 6 is really strong. Especially in this kind of meta, so you can basically toss out a ruin mode that's in your way, or you can get rid of problematic pieces that have swung and got a little bit greedy, much like the Mervamon.
Yeah, again, I think the other change I would make is play another Full Metal Blaze, because it just picks apart the Merva matchup so much, because you don't get to... So, I've used it twice on Merva players, on the newest matchup. While you can't... So you bounce 2 level 4s or lower, so you get to bounce the Saber Dramon and like whatever else rookie they decide to play out. Sometimes it's Ghazi, sometimes it's Psyche, and sometimes it's Goblin just because the hand is bad and whatever. So you bounce those 2. But then you get to bottom deck something. And I learned very early that Mervamon is not a problem on her own. It is the Anubis that makes it the problem, so Anubis always gets bottom decked. And that gives you like 2 turns of breathing room, because they need to do 1 turn to re-raise, and then another turn to push out. So that gives you 2 turns to fix the board, and oh my god, the amount of times Full Metal Blaze just gets rid of a problem child. The best catharsis is when you ask them if they're at 8 cards or how many cards. They say 7, and you see your bounce target on the board, so you can go, okay, I'm just going to Full Metal Blaze.
Oh, Nick, the stuff is in Dristle now.
What stuff?
The Massey stuff.
Oh, okay.
We'll worry about that later. Off topic.
Yeah. But no, Full Metal Blaze puts them at the 8th card, and then you bottom deck. Because I think I had that happen a couple of times, but it really psychs your opponent out because by default you tell your opponent, oh, if you have, I'm gonna bounce a level 4 back to your hand, and then they think, oh, that's like the worst card ever printed. That's so bad. You should be playing Full Moon Meteor, and then if you have 8 or more cards in your hand, I'll bottom deck anything level 6 or higher, and then that's when their soul gets crushed. Because you just bottom deck their key piece. And again, a lot of people are like, there's protections. Zudomon got rid of them really quickly. Like, if I can get an option, a lot of times the Blackboard matchups is just, I sacrifice my Zudo for 3 memory to get rid of their protections, and then I'll just bounce the level 6 to the bottom of the deck because card advantage and card adding.
Well, in that situation, you would do that, but in others, if you already have your Mirage and you have the Full Metal, you actually can use it a lot more efficiently, you know? Say they have like 16 cards in hand because they got greedy through drawing cough, Melga cough. You basically can just play Blaze for like 2 cost by getting rid of.
Not for 2 cost. It's an 8 cost with another.
I'm using it as an example. Okay,
that's Full Moon.
Yeah, but no,
I'm just saying because of the Melga or the Mirage effect plus the right inheritables.
Yeah, I think I got it down to a 5 or 6 cost one time. But it's very, like, a lot of times for me, the Full Metal Blaze was not the win more card, it was the correct stabilizing card in this economy, and I thank Zan for that a lot. Because I was so wishy-washy on my list, and then Zan gives me the one of, I test it, I would play it at 3, honestly. I would get rid of Full Moon. That card does so much work.
I mean, for right now, and that's why we play test, and that's why we're kind of a team. Because I know, Guardian, you were flip-flopping on decks, and then you ended up going into Red Hybrids, having a similar list to mine, and kind of just doing similar results to me. Your matchups were a little bit different, but the fact that we both did almost the exact same with Red Hybrids speaks for itself. The deck is consistent. It has certain things that it just struggles with. And I teched mine
there
more
is
for
a lot it actually struggles with. Its main problem, though, is the fact that it can't handle being Ruin Mode.
No, Ruin Mode actually, does not matter for the deck at all. It sucks a little bit just because you do rely on some DP-based abilities, but the fact that your hybrids basically just dodge dying to Ruin Mode kind of makes it so it doesn't really matter. It's more just the fact that you don't have as much level of interactivity as other decks right now in terms of, free interactions. Because, Nikki's been talking a lot about, bouncing a whole bunch of different cards with a whole bunch of different cards. We don't got any of that in Red Hybrid land. We're just straight up, Rookie Rush aggro, and right now this is not the greatest meta for that. It does have some good counter tech cards and good floodgates, but outside of that, to try to stall the opponent out, there's certain decks that it cannot handle.
I can agree with that because there was a lot of points during my Nationals bit where I would come across random decks. Okay, so basically I fought a Leomon at one point.
Oh yeah, you can't handle Fortitude. I kill your Digimon, Fortitude brings it back, and then the D-Digivolve also sucks to get rid of whatever you just used. So you just lose to Leomon, as well as Black War, Machine German, Divas, any big defensive deck you just almost auto lose to, and that's the worst feeling in the world.
I'm not going to deny that, but I actually didn't have a problem with the Leomon. I'm just saying it actually stunned me back a little bit because of that Fortitude, you know?
Yeah, I mean, popping the Fortitude means that it doesn't have blocker anymore because it doesn't have blocker natively. It gets that as an inheritable or through an option. But it does suck, and it does set you back. And sometimes, as I learned with my Beelstars, they can use that one extra turn to do some incredibly stupid stuff. Leomon being a little bit more fair is... means it's not going to do anything incredibly stupid, but just them having a body to continuously pressure you with is still kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny that one.
And then Headless, who isn't here, he took Black War, and his list was fine. He just had some really bad matchups. This format felt in terms of matchup spread, which is normal for most tournaments, it just felt very high variance, where it's just okay, I missed a piece. Therefore, I missed one piece on one turn. Therefore, I lost the game because of that sheer tempo loss. And Anubis really puts the pressure on decks needing to be as fast as it, and almost no other deck in the game except for Melga, when it's lucky, is as fast as Anubis, which is the problem and why we're saying it's a toxic format, because of Anubis. So I do have the top 64 spread. So there is, I think, 15 total decks on here. But the only one people actually care about is the fact that Anubis out of top 64 was 25, which means it was about 39. We'll just round it up just to be nice. 40% of top 64 was Anubis. That's hitting problematic territory in my books. Usually in past metas with past data that I have collected and used the same metrics on how I applied the data. Usually 35 is that tier, almost solo tier 1 zone. And then usually you'll have a deck that's tier 2 that's kind of just the only thing that could beat it out. This format really didn't have anything that beat it out, which is why the second best deck in top 64 was Mirage at 8, which only had 13% representation, technically 12.5. And then the third best deck was Red Hybrids at 7, which was 11% or 10.49 representation. 94. Yeah, 94% representation, which that's not crazy high to be able to try to check Anubis, which last year Black War Greymon X came out and he was dominating by 37%, and then just under that was Grandis at 21%, showing that Grandis was the check to Black War. Anubis actually has no check. Because if we look at all of the other decks, they literally are less than 5%, and they don't even have anything above 3 toppings. So you had 3 security controls. If you're combining Melga, you had 5 total Melgas, but blue and purple kind of do play a little bit differently. Blue had 3 and purple had 2.
Blue is a lot more aggressive to where purple is a lot more defensive.
Actually, it's the reverse.
Really?
Just because purple has the ability to OTK easier. Just because it has full access to using more consistency tools versus blue.
That's why you mean that. Okay.
Yeah. Then you had 2 Leomons, 2 Belfies, 2 BLs, 2 Machine Dramons, 1 Hunter, 1 Blue Flare, 1 Fenry, 1 Yellow Vaccine, 1 Deva, 1 Levia, 1 Bagra, and 1... the person got mad at me at Facebook for saying it, but I don't care. I'm going to say it again. 1 Yellow Hybrid. He called it Agu. It wasn't Agu Rush. It was Agu Beatdown or something like that. I'm like, no, if you're going to label anything, it's Marcus Rush if you're not going to say it's Yellow Hybrid. But it essentially is Yellow Hybrid, where you're just using Agumon and Marcus to be able to just swing with your Marcuses instead of actual hybrid Digimon, and then you seldomly play some hybrids just to be able to capitalize on the fact that you're already using tamers. It was Yellow Hybrids, but Yellow Hybrids at this point with that type of a build is trying to be security control. It just runs worse cards because your removal isn't as good, and you don't have as much recovery because you're playing too many tamers that have nothing to do with how security control actually wants to play. So that's the top 64 breakdown, and this kind of goes into one thing that I kind of had on my mind, and that is Nationals usually is the worst or second worst format of the entire year. Not necessarily because of the time gap between a set release and when we have to play it, but the fact that usually post Nationals always comes with a restriction, and usually post Nationals that restriction always impacts what was the best deck in Nationals. So it's this vicious cycle of this is just inherently the worst format, because obviously this year Anubis won, and Anubis had insanely high percentage. He had borderline no counterplay and no counters to him that were efficient enough to keep him in check, and now he's going to be gone as of March. Last year we had Black War Greymon in that same type of a position. You had Grandis as the counter, but that was whatever. And Greymon X Antibody from BT11 got hit. The year before that, the very first Nationals, we had EX1 just come out, and we had 4 Ice Wall Gabu Bond, which
don't remind me.
that was pretty bad
God.
in of itself. Granted, I would have to say that what followed it was just as toxic, which was Blue Hybrids, but Blue Hybrids wasn't Nationals. I think Blue Hybrids was Worlds. I don't remember exactly, but regardless, it was just another hyper toxic format, like easily the worst one of the entire year. So it's just funny that Nationals always puts itself into that type of a position. But this Nationals was ran by PPG, and I think for what PPG was trying to do under like the staff that they had and the time constraints they were given, they tournament wise was fine. I think event wise, because Bandai was trying to make this more of like a mini convention, I think that was done pretty poorly. Granted, they found a way miraculously to speed up check-in. So whoever decided that system is a genius, because I wish they continued doing that, but everything else was aligned. It basically, like, people on Facebook called it correctly. It was LineCon 2024, because everything was just excruciatingly long of a wait to wait for essentially nothing, because the only other activity outside of like the tournaments was like the scavenger hunt and demos. Well, most of the demos filled up really quickly, and for Union Arena, the big demo that they were trying to push, you had to schedule that, and that was full again really quickly.
So I actually talked to a lot of people on that one.
Okay.
And the reason why Union Arena was full was because people kept repeating it. So they would find discarded cards outside the venue just during the round breaks. Just like, hey, you're leaving? Can I have that? Come back and redo it so they can get each deck virtually taking all the product before anyone else could try it.
I mean, that's Bandai's poor planning and poor thought process behind it. Like, they should automatically know people are going to want to do that. I mean, like, people do that with Digimon already, and people have done that with Dragon Ball and some of the other stuff, where it's just like, I'm going to demo the game, I'm going to demo it again, just to try to get it all. Like, that, people just want it. Like, what's so hard of just having a bunch, especially if it's a free product thing, and just literally giving it like candy? Like...
Exactly.
There's no problem with that. And then the whole scavenger hunt, like, they had this whole scavenger hunt where we had to go to each of the different booths and answer questions, take pictures, follow on social media. It was a colossal waste of time, because people would wait like 2 hours just to say, hey, I followed you on social media, give me a stamp. And then the prizing at the end was just the Gen Con promos that people already have. One of each game, except for Union Arena, but that's whatever. And it was like, yeah, cool. That felt like a colossal waste of my time, but that was literally the only other thing to do, because side events were filling up in a heartbeat. Side events were ran pretty poorly, and yeah, it was just a giant mess. So, like...
You see, I actually ripped apart the entirety of this Nats in the survey they gave us. I told them straight up that you guys actually had your invite, so you had to wait 2 hours. They should have let you guys go first. This way, the players that had the invites knocked it out. They didn't have to worry about it. They actually had something to do, and they could enjoy the convention. Another part was that the fact that they made this free. That's another problem I had with it.
I think that was fine. Because you had the people who were playing in the tournament. That was like obviously the main pull. It wasn't meant to be a convention. They just tried to make it bigger. But supposedly next year, based on the pricing that we have, they're gonna close it up again.
Which I'm fine with. But the main reason I'm saying that this was a problem was because the fact they made it free and open like this, it leads back to what I was gonna say, if you're correct, of their mismanagement skills of how this went down. And I told them in the survey, just like, this did not work. Close it up. And if you guys try to do a free again, do a prelim tournament the day before, you know? This way, you say the 128 has a chance to earn extra invites that decide not to come.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, the system that they had, like, was fine. Like, what they should have done was store championships, also give you priority registration and give you a one round buy, and then regional toppings gives you 2 round buy, and then just to flesh out the numbers, just lottery out the rest. And I don't know what they're going to do with store championships this time around, but last year's attendance for store championships, at least in my area, was at an all-time low just because there was borderline zero incentive outside of the shiny gold cards, which some people really just didn't care about. There was actually no reason to play in a store championship, and that was really sad and depressing. So they still have to work on their tournament structure. But for this event specifically, like, if you literally weren't in the main event, there was basically no reason to even be there, period. Like, it was cool seeing, like, live performers go up on stage. It was cool seeing the different booths for the different games because they wanted to try to advertise and cross-pollinate. But like you said, it was just ran so poorly. The staff didn't even know what the heck was going on. The people with the 2-round bye, like, there was zero reason why at, like, 8 o'clock they had to stop taking demos when that's when, like, people were checking in and people with the 2-round bye were there doing nothing for 2 hours. So it's just like that we couldn't even do the scavenger hunt. I feel like that was just a ginormous waste of time.
It was.
Yeah, and it was almost kind of insulting. Just because, like, cool, you don't respect my time to let me do other things, so that way I can focus on the tournament while the tournament is going on and I have that bye. Like, it was really, really awkward. So I ended up just hanging out with Tyler, and we went to, like, some chicken and donut place, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I get that. So another thing I didn't like about the Nationals was the lack of actual vendors. I get Bondi wanted to home in on everyone and just be like, hey, come get your premium early or buy directly from us. But there was no way to actually try and reverse one's money. And then they have the gonads to say, don't sell on property, even though a lot of us did. Cough, cough. We're not going to go into that, but we needed actual vendors to actually be there to allow us to step into the secondary market a little. So like Core or
just for a second.
Tau.
Okay.
Jordan, shush. Just because, again, there are some etiquettes that are and aren't allowed at regionals, and we do kind of have to address this because it is the elephant in the room. You aren't allowed to sell in the hall because, again, this is not a for-profit thing. It's always for trades, and there is that gray area. And again, we don't condone. We're just players. But Guardian does have a point. We wanted vendors. Like, I wanted vendors to try to, again, reimburse my cost for the event. Of like, I bought a lot of stuff to try to build my deck, and these are the stuff I didn't get through.
I mean, like, yeah, they could have easily just outside of the hall had both Core and PPG just have, like, other sets to buy, because Bandai had like, I think the only 2 sets you could buy from the Bandai, like, vendor was literally the last 2, which was BT14 and EX5.
I actually went up to the thing and looked. So you are correct, but also not. They also were selling sets 1 through 4 as well, but those didn't sell as fast, so they were trying to draw people in on it. So there's also those.
I didn't know that. That's a mistake, but whatever. They could try.
But no, like, Guardian doesn't have a point. Like as a tournament, I would have appreciated vendors, but I understand why they didn't. Only because it was, as Zan said, it's supposed to be the convention. Like, it's not supposed to be a regional. It's not supposed to be a sanctioned vendor kind of event. It's supposed to be more like this. You're going to have fun. You're going to see the cool, shiny stuff. Again, I felt... The worst part for us is we got there relatively late. We got there, like, 9-ish. Because, like... Oh, yeah, the hall doesn't open until, like, 9... Like, registration... Like, games don't start till 9:30, so we probably get there at 9. And it's not even... And, like, maybe we'll get there early. No, like, that was open since 8. Premium Bandai sold out. It was like,
Yeah, that was actually kind of a bummer, because I did actually want to try and real quick poke over there and see how much stuff. I know Headless wanted to get his hands on the Yamato figure, but that thing sold like that.
Yeah. And the fact that we're playing in the tournament means that we don't have the opportunity to buy, because, we actually have to participate in the tournament. So it put like this really awkward place where it's like spectators can come and do basically nothing but purchase stuff and demo, and then event players could do nothing but just play in the event. Because like I thought about dropping out at a certain point to do side events and to grind side events, but when I heard that side events was done extremely poorly and it was like extra skimpy and super hard to get into, like I'm not fighting with 500 other people to get one out of like 16 slot to compete for 3 more rounds of something. So I just stuck it out and I just played the whole main event because there was no reason for me not to, just because I couldn't do anything else with the with that time.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this moving forward, mainly as like a team thing, but also kind of like I guess the broad Digimon community. If you're wanting to play a side event, you need to drop out by round 3. There is no if and or buts. Like round 2, round 3 is where you need to commit to the dropping out. You can't sit there because like the last 3 regionals we went to, it was the same thing, and it's just the pattern that like you kind of have to just accept it now. Like by round 2, if you're down 1, you need to commit. Like after round 2, what's your record? Okay, do you think you can win the next one? After round 3, did you win? No, drop, go grind side events. Did you win? You have to have the mandate of heaven now. You have to commit to the long run. You are never getting a side event for the rest of the
I already can agree with that, considering a certain somebody was grinding the living hell out of it just to try and land in the top 64.
Well, I also think that like in order to alleviate that issue, they should have actually had a second TO. Like there was zero reason why they couldn't call up Core and be like, "Hey, Core, we need a second TO to run strictly side events." Like there's zero reason why they couldn't have done Core just to run side events for all of their games. Maybe not Dragon Ball, but
you see, I agree with that, but they also could have as easily just done a little more side events than just what.
Well, the PPG was doing both the main event and the side event, and their staff seemed stretched kind of thin. And just the processes on maintaining all of the different side events and the main event for 2 to 3 different games, it was a little bit taxing. So like if they want to do like this again, they definitely need a TO dedicated just for side events, just to be able to keep things running smoothly, keep things like having things to be done. And I think like that could have solved a lot of issues.
You see, I didn't know that they were stretched thin, so that's where my comment was coming from.
Well, they're one TO running 3 games, and having like at least 3 to 5 side events on top of the main event for each game. Like it basically was like they had one judge to spare for the side events, and that's kind of it. And I was just like, yeah, they should have just had more, and they could have easily done it with like with what they were trying to do. And I don't like blame them for trying to make it more of a convention, but they just made it the most boring convention humanly possible because spectators couldn't do anything but buy stuff, and players were just locked into the main tournament, so they couldn't try to participate in anything else that was going on. Then on top of that, they had the Dragon Ball Battle Hour, which I have no idea where that was located, but like
that was actually located in the hall below us.
Yeah, it was literally its own separate thing, which Bandai has 2 Dragon Ball card games. So it's just like, oh, keep
one of which going belly up.
I don't think it's going belly up as of right now. It has the potential depending on how Fusion World does compared to Masters, because there will be a certain point where it's just like, okay, obviously the attention's all on Fusion World or all on Masters, so we're going to start focusing on one versus the other. I think Fusion World has the potential to be that game, considering it's a soft reboot. It's actually being supported in Japan. It has an online client, so it just has a lot more things going for it. But the fact that they also had, a separate sub-convention to their main convention that was dedicated to just Dragon Ball was also pretty awkward, because I don't know if PPG staff was split to run that as well. So that was also something, another factor where like I honestly think that Bandai just did not think this out at all. Like, the tournament itself, the main event, was fine. The announcements were good, considering we're getting the unification by like spring of next year. And they confirmed that they're going to be combining sets 18, 19, and 20. So I'm guessing it's Special Booster 2.0 and 2.5. I hate that naming convention, but if they're going to do that again, that's probably most likely what they're going to call it. I have no idea what those metas are going to be, because I think maybe 2.0 would probably be the meta for Nationals next year. And who knows how they're going to split up those 3 sets into 2 sets. And then anytime they do large sets, it's immediately kind of screwy. So whatever. Hopefully the format itself is actually going to be good. But that's the only thing I can say on that. And then we got more information on Liberators. Not a whole lot. They just showed a splash screen and some extra characters.
So on the Liberators bit, from what I've been seeing, it's more to interact with the card game again. So they're kind of pulling another Tamers in a sense. So I wouldn't mind this if this is taking place in kind of the same universe. I wouldn't mind seeing like an older Takato, an older Rika kind of thing.
It's definitely not. I can say that for a fact. Just because most of the time they don't interconnect most of their universes. They do very seldomly, but they very clearly define and label it, so that way there actually is minimal confusion. But with Liberators, I have no idea, like with these promos, I have no idea how they're going to be distributing these promos en masse for other players to get, because right now, just like with the Survive promos, this is the only way you could get it, and it kind of sucks, because for the decks, I think these are going to be needed at the start, and then phased out later, but the fact that they're going to be needed is already a problem. But that's nothing new. We've complained about Bandai in promo distribution for a while.
I want to pipe up here just for a second, because for 3 things. The Survive promo was available in the games, but that was basically having you spend like $30 per card for the original 3 colors to rebuy Survive, get the Bandai thing.
It was only in the games in Europe.
No, I think it was an NA as well.
Nope, I bought the game. It came with nothing. Europe had a reward system where you could redeem points to get the Survive promos.
Oh, that's super scummy then. Because I know we got them as alt arts, I think, as either a premium Bandai set or like it was in the tournament pack, I think.
Yeah, like reprinting them for the starter deck seems like that would be the most logical thing to try to upgrade the starter deck, incentivize people for buying multiple copies of the starter deck. I just hate the fact that it's like 6 cards, a 1 in 6 chance. They need to stop doing that. They really do. Nobody likes it. Nobody enjoys it. It just sucks for distribution, and promos shouldn't be mandatory game pieces, which a lot of these promos, they're trying to make mandatory game pieces, and that's why things are getting screwy and why people are complaining. Because if they were like funny haha stuff or just alt art stuff, nobody would like really care. It's just like, oh, it's a collector's thing. But like the fact that we need these is a huge problem, because right now we're having a problem with just a whole bunch of promos. Because they were done poorly.
I think they're gonna do what they did with the movie promos. They're just gonna make it as like a tournament pack, or put it in like a tournament promo.
Who knows? We have zero confirmation on what's gonna happen. And then what were some of the other Digimon news? Like, we know some BT15 information with like the special crest alt arts of the ace
Which
cards.
I despise.
That's like whatever. I don't particularly care too much.
Oh yeah, the LM set ruining the BT15 pull rates.
That's so we don't even know what the pull rates for the LM set or BT15 is going to be. They showed off BT15 cards, but it would have been nice to know what the pull rates are, because I have to do a video on pre-release and I can't actually do a good video because I don't know the pull rates. So yeah,
they might do the BT8 thing where it's like one pack had. I feel like that's what they're gonna do, because in BT8 every pack had one promo card in it, and it was always because it was the promos we didn't get for like the Digimon Season 1 crew of their Mega, their Tamer, and they're all they're relatively good cards. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are worse than others, but they all rely on having your tamer because it's the art and it's your level 6 and like
Yeah.
it was one in every pack pretty much. Like or it took the place of the rare. I think is what it actually did. But like it was very very
That was BT7.
annoying.
The campaign rares. Yeah.
No, it was 8.
Nope.
Wasn't it?
That was 7.
7. Okay, 7.
Yeah. 7 had campaign rares just like 11. And that made rares like extra screwy. But yeah, so like, and the other really dumb thing that I didn't enjoy about this event was the fact that like, okay, they made it a free event, they gave us some nice promos, but not everyone, like each of the different regions had basically their own version of the event where like certain promos were missing or the playmats were different. Like I would have rather had Europe's playmat as a free entry level playmat than paying $30 for the crap that we got. Because it was basically just recycled from last year, just having Dorogoramon in front of Omnimon instead of a globe in the back of Omnimon. Like it was the same Omnimon pose, and I'm just like, I don't need to spend $30 on this crap. I didn't even spend $8 on the sleeves because I didn't enjoy the coloring on the sleeves. Like I thought it was stupid. So like the fact that we needed to buy our like proof that we were here outside of the promo cards was very poorly thought out. And then what Europe and Oceania and Latin America got for theirs was way better. Well, except for like the actual prizing mats. But the fact that they got like free entry level mat that was Angemon and it was gorgeous that pissed me off. But we got the Liberator packs and they don't. And the most likely the Liberator packs are going to follow the same suit as like the Survive promos and the O2 cards where they're actually not going to be legal, which is another problem. Like why make the promos and say we can't play with them because you screwed up and didn't make them accessible? Like it makes very little sense. And they just made a whole bunch of like really small, poor decisions. And like, I wanted to say something to the director, but I also feel like I would have just been on deaf ears if I tried to approach her, not necessarily alone, but like just try to approach her in a professional manner on some of the actual issues rather than just take it from a survey. The surveys are good and I'm glad that they're listening, but they need to actually listen.
Yeah, I can agree on that. I mean, in some cases they do, as Headless has mentioned in our previous talks offline, they do actually listen at some points, but other points they do just tend to blow the players off.
Yeah, I mean, they already have a plan, they already know what they're going to do, and like if it lines up with the players' intentions, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. They'll just ignore it until it actually becomes a big enough issue where they can't. So I didn't hate the event. I just thought the event could have been better. There could have been more to do. It could have been more grandiose. They could have it just seemed very sloppy and half-hearted in terms of what they were trying to do, because everything else was an advertisement, like, and I didn't exactly enjoy that. The scavenger hunt was a pain. The fact that I couldn't demo was stupid. I didn't even know where Dragon Ball was to even look at the room, just because I was curious, because like it's still a Bandai property and I'm already there and they're there. That was poorly thought out, having like two sub conventions in the same place for the same stuff. I was just like, what's going on here? I don't think that the whole thing was a mess. It was just, it could have just been better.
Okay, so according to Burst, apparently they didn't get the Liberator stuff over in Oceania.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Europe and Latin America didn't get it either. So yeah, like I said, promos have always been a huge issue, and hopefully with unification, like I wanted to scream that out when they were talking about it. I'm like, can you fix the promos when the unification comes out? I held myself back. But I really just wanted to scream something to get attention on it. And I know it's off of their script, and Yoshi probably would not like bounce off of that and reciprocate. just because, again, it was off script, and I know how Bandai operates for the most part. Yoshi did a fantastic job being the hype man. Steve did a pretty good job at his actual in-game insight as far as what was going on. I think they made a fantastic power pair. But I feel like because Eggman was busy doing Dragon Ball stuff, so they chose pretty good people on that front. I have no idea who they got for One Piece, but that's beside the point. We're Digimon here. Like it just was to them. It just felt very safe because Yoshi's an actor and he's familiar with filling out these types of contracts and what he can and can't say or do. And then Steve, they already have a pre-established relationship with. So again, it just, Bandai likes to play things very safe, close to their heart. And that's what this event kind of felt like. It was like so reserved that it just felt awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Nats was interesting. Meta was definitely something. I'm glad we're going to be moving off of that because I think this is easily one of the worst metas we've had in a very long time. People could look at the rest of the decks that weren't Anubis and say, wow, this was really diverse. But I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, but Anubis basically means that if you're not playing Anubis, you're getting lucky. So that doesn't, like, literally outside of Mirage and Red Hybrids being the only other, like, semi-consistent decks, everything else was basically in get lucky territory, which is not where you want to be. It's funny, but it's not exactly where you want to be. We want, like, BT14 results. So hopefully moving forward, the next couple of metas are going to be good. And next Nats, I'm hoping, will be better. More information to come.
So the problem is next Nats is gonna be what, like January, so it'll be before unification. So next Nats will be the last
it's gonna
time.
it's gonna be mid unification. That's unless they make it March. Then it'll be at unification. But I think their goal is Worlds next year is going to be unified. So they're probably gonna have like a February Nationals next year again, and then it's going to be in the middle of unification, and then Worlds should be unified. But that's
I'm just scared about that, like as everyone's like, I think you mentioned it for us offline, but we're too far for it to be like a set a month, so they're gonna have to do like release version 1.5 where it's like,
no, they already said
everything...
that. They said that at Nats they're gonna combine the sets. I don't know where they're gonna put EX sets, but they're going to be combining the main sets again.
So with me talking with other players, they've already speculated that the next EX after EX6 is gonna be kind of the halfway point where we would get the BT 18 and 19, even though those are being melded together to form the superset, you know?
Yeah, I have no idea. They didn't say anything about EX sets, so we can only speculate. But I think this is probably a good time to stop. I know this is a little bit on the longer side, but that's because Nationals was pretty big and there was just a lot to talk about. So at this point, I want to thank everyone for coming out and listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please share it with others on social media. It really does help spread the word and support the podcast. And I want to thank everyone again for listening, and we will see you next time.